mobile application. Survey participants will be selected at random to receive special gifts. 2025 Arirang Overseas TV Viewers Survey. We look forward to hearing from you.
In our headlines on this Monday, August 18th, here in South Korea. South Korea and the U.S. launched their annual summertime military exercise as President Lee Jae-myung places priority on the protection of people. Meanwhile, the Trump administration expands 50% tariffs on steel and aluminium to include 407 new derivative items starting August 18th. And former First Lady Kim Gun-hee faces a second session of interrogation on this Monday following her arrest last week on corruption charges. We start here in South Korea, where military officials from Seoul and Washington have begun their annual summertime training aimed at bolstering their defense posture against potential threats. Our Pyun Ye-young reports.
The annual Ulchi Freedom Shield joint military exercise between South Korea and the United States began today. The combined drills, aimed at defending the Korean peninsula in the event of a contingency, will run through the 28th.
This is a defensive exercise conducted annually, and this year's scenarios incorporate realistic threats, including those analyzed from recent wartime situations.
The exercise has also been strengthened to prepare for new security challenges, such as drone, GPS, and cyber attacks, as well as advanced weapons powered by cutting-edge technology. Around 18,000 South Korean troops are taking part, about the same as last year, along with a similar number of U.S. troops. About half of the 40 planned field drills have been postponed to next month, with the ongoing heat waves cited as a reason for the adjustment. While Pyongyang dismissed the drills, concerns remain that it may use the UFS as a pretext for provocations. In a statement last Thursday, Kim Yo-jong, the sister of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, called the joint drills worthless and futile. At a briefing on Monday, when asked about preemptive measures to help improve inter-Korean relations, South Korea's Ministry of National Defense said it had no specific updates for now.
I don't have anything specific to share at this point. What I can say is that the Ministry of National Defense will continue to support the government's efforts to establish peace on the Korean Peninsula, while maintaining military readiness and steadily pursuing effective measures to ease tensions.
Meanwhile, a 20-minute nationwide civil defense drill will take place on Wednesday at 2 p.m. The drill will involve air raid evacuation training and exercises to clear the way for fire trucks, ambulances, and other rescue vehicles. Hyun Yeong, Arirang News.
And President Lee Jae-myung has reaffirmed his administration's commitment to its people amid the start of defense drills this week, also asserting that true security on the Korean Peninsula lies in promoting peace. Arirang's Yoon Jung-min files this report from the presidential office.
The state's top priority is to protect the lives and safety of the people. That's according to President Lee Jae-myung as he presided over a cabinet meeting on the first day of the nationwide Ulchi exercise.
복합 위기에 대비한 통합적인 안보 역량이 필요한 상황입니다. 이번 을지 연습을 통해서 우리의 안보 태세를 면밀히 점검하고 국가의 총체적인 위기 관리 능력을 한층 더 발전시켜 나갔으면 좋겠습니다.
The four-day Ulchi civil defense drills involving more than 580,000 people at some 4,000 public institutions are designed to reinforce government readiness and run parallel to the South Korea-U.S. joint military exercises. This year's focus is on fending off new security threats, including drone and cyber attacks. At the same time, South Korea's commander-in-chief noted true security lies in safeguarding peace.
작은 실전들이 조약돌처럼 쌓이면 상호 간의 신뢰가 회복될 것이고 또 평화의 길도 넓어져서 남북이 함께 성장할 수 있는 그런 토대도 마련될 것입니다.
For that, he instructed relevant ministries to prepare implementing existing inter-Korean agreements in phases, first starting with those possible to carry out. A reconciliatory message was evident in Lee's Liberation Day speech last Friday, where he vowed to gradually restore the 2018 military agreement.
The Ulchi exercise is designed to protect our people's lives and safety. It is defensive in nature and has no intention of attacking North Korea or raising tensions on the Korean Peninsula.
On top of that, noting the popularity of the Netflix hit animation K-pop Demon Hunters, the president asked for comprehensive measures to support K-content going global, calling the power of culture a new driving force for national strengths. Approved on Monday were more than a dozen bills, some of which were vetoed by Lee's predecessor, including the DP-led broadcasting bill revision, aimed at changing the governance structures at public broadcasters, and a grain bill that mandates government intervention on rice prices.
Also on the discussion table was utilizing social media for government advertisements in the digital era. And the president mentioned the need to hold accountable any media that spreads disinformation. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, the Trump administration expands its 50% tariffs on steel and aluminium to include a long list of new derivative products starting today, that is August 18th. Our correspondent Moon Ji-young has details.
The broadened tariff measures apply to products imported into the U.S. or released from bonded warehouses starting Monday. These additional tariffs, initially announced last Friday by the Trump administration, primarily target the steel and aluminum content within these derivative products. Specifically, a 50% tariff will be levied only on the value attributable to the steel and aluminum components. The expansion follows requests from U.S. domestic industries in May, which were then solidified by the U.S. Department of Commerce after a period of stakeholder consultation in June. These measures fall under Section 232 of the U.S. Trade Expansion Act, citing national security as the rationale. However, Korea has strongly asserted that Korean products do not pose a threat to U.S. national security. Despite these appeals, the Commerce Department largely approved its domestic industry's claims, excluding only about 60 items already under other Section 232 measures or investigations. The burden on the Korean exports is bound to be heavy.
The 50% tariff hike will severely diminish the price competitiveness of Korean firms, likely shrinking their U.S. market share. With many previously untaxed derivative products now included, Korean firms face significant risks of losing existing clients, struggling to find new ones, and grappling with increased production costs and long-term contract issues with U.S. partners.
Concerns are growing in Seoul, with the Trade Ministry on Monday stating that the U.S. could further expand its 50% tariff list for steel and aluminum derivative products. These additional items are expected as early as September, fueled by ongoing requests from U.S. industries. The Trade Ministry has pledged to significantly expand its support programs for SMEs affected by import regulations. This includes broadening consultation services for verifying steel and aluminum content and providing proof of origin, while also substantially reducing the financial contributions required from companies for these support services. 문지영, 아리랑 뉴스.
Former First Lady Kim Gun-hee faced a second session of intense interrogation by the special counsel on this Monday, following her arrest last week on corruption charges. Our political correspondent Shin Ha-young has more.
Former First Lady Kim Gun-hee and close associates appeared at the special counsel's office on Monday. Kim's questioning, which began at 10 a.m., comes as special counsel Min Jung-gi investigates corruption allegations against the former First Lady, with Monday's session focusing on her alleged interference in candidate nominations during past elections and stock price manipulation. As in her previous questioning last Thursday, according to the team, Kim refused to answer most of the team's questions. It was Kim Gun-hee's second questioning since her arrest last week after a court issued an arrest warrant with detention. Kim Ye-sung, who's often described as the butler of her family, also appeared at the office. It was his first session since being taken into custody on Friday on charges of embezzling $2.4 million from IMS Mobility, a company in which he holds a stake. Prosecutors suspect he diverted part of the funds into another firm he effectively controlled. Investigators also examined whether the embezzled money or other profits were funneled to Kim Gun-hee's family. The same day, a shaman named Chun Sang-bae was also questioned over allegations that he delivered requests for business favors along with luxury gifts from the Unification Church to the former First Lady. Meanwhile, the Seoul Central District Court held a hearing on Monday on former President Yoon Suk-yeol's insurrection and abuse of power charges without him present, as he has refused to attend. Yoon has skipped all 5 hearings in the insurrection case since his rearrest, citing health problems. His representative said he will attend once his condition improves, but declined to provide details on his current health. Shin Ha-young, Arirang News.
In other news, U.S. President Donald Trump touts his recent talks with Russia's Vladimir Putin in Alaska as he prepares to sit down with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy in Washington, D.C. on this Monday. Our Lee Sing-jae has the latest.
U.S. President Donald Trump, in a social media post on Sunday, promised big progress on Russia. However, he did not provide any details on what progress has been made since the no-deal after summit with Russian President Vladimir Putin last Friday in Alaska. According to sources cited by Reuters, Washington and Moscow have floated proposals under which Russia would give up small pockets of occupied Ukrainian territory in exchange for Kyiv ceding fortified land in the east and freezing front lines elsewhere. But most importantly for Kyiv, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says a security guarantee is something Washington will continue to push for Ukraine.
In the meantime, the one thing we do know that Ukraine has said repeatedly and publicly talked about is security guarantees. That's a very reasonable request. That's something we're working on, and that's something the Russian side has to understand, obviously.
Washington has also discussed the possibility of a defense pact, as Trump's envoy to Russia, Steve Witkoff, told Fox News on Sunday that the U.S. and its European partners could offer Ukraine NATO-style security guarantees outside the alliance framework as part of a settlement.
It means that the United States is potentially prepared to be able to give Article 5 security guarantees, but not from NATO, directly from the United States and other European countries. That is big. I mean, really big.
Meanwhile, European and NATO leaders announced they will stand with President Vladimir Zelenskyy in Washington on Monday, presenting a united front as Trump pursues peace talks with Russia. Leaders from Britain, France, Germany, Italy, and Finland are joining Zelenskyy after his exclusion from Trump's summit with Russian President Vladimir Putin last Friday. Their show of support comes after a tense Oval Office meeting in February when Trump clashed with Zelenskyy in a heated exchange. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
New findings show Samsung is reportedly eating into Apple's U.S. market share amid the growing appetite for Samsung's foldable phones. According to data by market analyst Canalys, shipments from Samsung soared in the American market, raising its share in the second quarter to 31% from 23% on year. Apple's U.S. market share, meanwhile, shrank to 49% from 56% during the same period. Pundits are also linking Samsung's latest positive performance to its diverse product lineup. Back here on the local front, capital Seoul is poised to usher in a fresh mode of public transport come September, and it's going to glide through water. Our Park Hyo-bin took a ride.
In a city driven by cars, buses, and subways, this one moves differently. No rails, no tires, just water. This is the Hangang Bus, Seoul's new ferry-based public transport, designed to connect key spots along the Hangang River.
This ferry just left Apgujeong and is now heading to Yeouido. The view from here is stunning. You can see the river, bridges, and tall buildings, all in one frame.
Ahead of its official launch in September, the city began offering early test rides for residents to experience the new service firsthand. As the ferry glides across the water, slicing through the breeze with the skyline in full view, smiles spread among passengers on board.
It was really fun riding the Hangang Bus. It made me feel happy.
It's very refreshing. I'd say the view is very good. Excellent.
I've been on ferries abroad, but seeing one as public transport in Seoul is amazing. The view is beautiful. It feels completely different being on the river instead of just looking at it.
Step inside and it feels far from your typical subway or bus. Panoramic windows and ceiling skylights flood the interior with natural light. Nearly 200 seats are paired with foldable tray tables, and there's even a cafe corner where passengers can grab a quick snack or drink. The ferry is scheduled to operate 2 main routes starting in September. The Hangang Bus operates a 75-minute one-way route linking 7 stops from west to eastern Seoul and returns along the same path. For faster travel, a 54-minute express route is also available. What's more, the ferry runs on a hybrid propulsion system, cutting carbon emissions, and it has passed all required safety tests and certifications. A one-way ticket costs 3,000 won, or about $2 for adults, with transfer discounts available through the city's transit card system. Whether you're commuting, sightseeing, or simply taking a break from the city's rush, the Hangang Bus offers a moment to slow down and see Seoul from a whole new perspective. Park Hyo-bin, Arirang News.
And boats will also serve as means of public transport during the Ulsan International Garden Expo, scheduled for the spring of 2028. Our Eun-jin explains.
This newly launched boat cuts through the Taehwagang River, which flows through the city center of Ulsan from west to east. Aboard the boat, you can see the buildings and modern structures that make up the city's skyline, as well as the well-maintained gardens below them. The operational route stretches about 6 kilometers between the Taehwagang National Garden and the Samsan-Yeocheon landfill site, and is expected to connect the two event venues of the upcoming 2028 International Garden Expo.
We've launched a pilot project introducing water transportation that uses the Taehwagang River. We hope it will go beyond just being a means of transportation and become a new urban tourism experience and a highlight of the Garden Expo.
The newly introduced boats use a pontoon structure with a flat-bottomed float supporting a deck. It offers stability with minimal swaying, making it easy for anyone to board. Each boat can carry up to 12 people and travels at a speed of 25 kilometers per hour, allowing passengers to enjoy sightseeing along the way. However, the shallow waters of the Taehwagang River remain an issue for smooth operation.
There are some shallow areas in the river, so we plan to assess the route during trial operations and may need to dredge where necessary to prevent any future problems.
The city of Ulsan will decide whether to formally adopt the service based on the results of the trial operations. Successful operation of these boats is also projected to serve as an important tourism resource. 이은진, Arirang News.
This is The World Now, bringing you the latest stories from around the globe. In Israel, Tel Aviv's hostage square was filled with hundreds of thousands of people on Sunday, demanding an end to the Gaza war and a deal to bring home the remaining hostages. On the same day, a nationwide strike swept the country, bringing much of Israel to a standstill. In one of the largest protests since the conflict began, approximately 500,000 people reportedly participated in the Tel Aviv demonstration alone, with other protests around Israel bringing the nationwide total to an estimated 1 million people. The protests were organized by the Hostages and Missing Families Forum and included a one-day national strike on Sunday morning. This strike involved blocking roads and halting work nationwide. Israeli police made dozens of arrests during the day. The protests coincided with the Israeli military's finalization of plans for a major ground operation aimed at capturing Gaza City. Despite the growing public pressure, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu criticized the protests and defended the ongoing military offensive. In Pakistan's northwestern Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province, flash floods and landslides have killed more than 300 people, with over 200 still missing. According to Pakistan's National Disaster Management Authority, by Sunday morning, the death toll had risen to at least 337 people, with most killed in flash floods. In Buner district, a 3.5-hour drive from the capital Islamabad, 207 people died after the area saw more than 150 millimeters of rain in just 1 hour on Friday. Rescue efforts are underway, but heavy rainfall is forecast to continue until August 21st. While the region typically experiences monsoon rains between June and September, scientists say that climate change is intensifying and increasing the frequency of flash floods and landslides. Air Canada cabin crew have defied a government-mandated return-to-work order and are continuing their strike. This comes despite a binding arbitration directive issued by the Canada Industrial Relations Board, which requires more than 10,000 flight attendants to resume their duties by 2 p.m. on Sunday. Now entering its third day, the strike has grounded 700 flights daily, affecting travel for up to 130,000 passengers each day. Leaders of the Canadian Union of Public Employees have condemned the order as unconstitutional and are demanding a fair contract that includes compensation for unpaid ground duties. British actor Terence Stamp, who played the role of villain General Zod in the original Superman films, died on Sunday, aged 87. Throughout his 6-decade career, Stamp earned an Oscar nomination in 1963 for his first film Billy Budd and delivered standout performances, including The Adventures of Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, in which he portrayed a transgender woman. Stamp's final screen appearance was in Last Night in Soho in 2021. His family stated he leaves behind an extraordinary body of work, both as an actor and as a writer, that will continue to touch and inspire people for years to come. 최지희, 아리랑 뉴스.
Since National Liberation Day, a heatwave warning has been in place across the country. Heatwave advisories are in place in the central region, including Seoul, and heatwave warnings are in place in the southern parts of the country. Please take care of your health in this hot weather. Rain has been falling in the Seoul metropolitan area in Gangwon-do Province today. Looking at the expected precipitation, 5 to 60 millimeters is expected, and more than 80 millimeters of rain could fall in northern parts of Gyeonggi-do and Gangwon-do Province by tonight. Tomorrow morning will start warm at 23 to 26 degrees Celsius all over the country. Daily highs move up to 30 degrees in Seoul, and Chuncheon and Busan 31 degrees. Rain clouds will be seen in the Seoul metropolitan area in Gangwon-do Province early in this week. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. Coming up right after this break is our daily panel session. So do stay with us, and thank you for now.
Arirang TV is conducting an overseas TV viewer survey to provide you with a better global broadcast service. Share your valuable feedback on the Arirang TV website www.arirang.com or mobile application. Survey participants will be selected at random to receive special gifts. 2025 Arirang Overseas TV Viewer Survey. We look forward to hearing from you.
인식 시작합니다.
헤이 미러, 오늘의 운동 루틴 시작해줘.
네, 오늘의 운동 루틴을 시작하겠습니다. 레디, 고! 좀 더 앉아보아요. 4, 3, 2, 1. 고생했어요.
We move. Annually, we invest more than 10% of our total revenues in research and development, and 15% in the R&D workforce. Main products: pneumatic cylinders, solenoid valves, hydraulic cylinders, air preparation units, and grippers, and all other products are manufactured through systematic management. KCC Precision.
We are a well-known company in the field of road safety facility manufacturing. We operate the factory nationwide in Korea to go beyond the demanding safety standards of the ages. We are a global network, local, worldwide, the global small and strong company appointed by Korean government. We are KSI.
President Lee Jae-myung shares hopes of rebuilding trust and reviving dialogue on the Korean peninsula, while his US and Russian counterparts meet in Alaska amid hopes for an end to the Kremlin's aggression against Ukraine. With more press perspective today. Hello, hope your work week is off to a good start. You're watching Press Perspective for this Monday, August 18th here in Seoul. I've been Sun-hee. President Lee Jae-myung has rejected unification on the Korean peninsula via absorption, adding that South Korea respects North Korea's political system. We've more on his remarks, but first we touch upon the recent talks between US President Donald Trump and his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin in Alaska. For this, I have Celia Ferretti with French daily Le Croix here in the studio. Celia, it's great to have you here.
Glad to be here.
I also have Professor Pan Kil-chu at the Korea National Diplomatic Academy live on the line. Professor Pan, it's a pleasure.
Hello, good to be with you.
Right, Celia, we will start here in the studio. So let's begin with a recap of the press announcements, if you will, given by Russia's Vladimir Putin and his US counterpart Donald Trump in Alaska, of course, following their talks last Friday.
Sure. After the 2.5-hour meeting, shorter actually than expected, in Alaska, both Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump made short statements. Vladimir Putin spoke first. He praised what he called a constructive and neighborly atmosphere, and even took the opportunity to remind the audience that Alaska once was part of Russia before being sold to the United States. Eventually, he moved on to Ukraine, but not in terms of a ceasefire. Instead, he said that an agreement has been reached and the root causes of the conflict needed to be eliminated before peace could be achieved. In the diplomatic language of the Kremlin, that means Ukraine would first have to accept Russian sovereignty over the disputed territories and renounce its foreign military partnerships. In other words, that's the same idea that Russia has been saying since day one. So it's not very, there's no breakthrough. And Putin appeared to be very confident, though, during this press conference. Donald Trump, meanwhile, spoke secondly. He spoke briefly. He didn't really mention Ukraine directly. He made no reference to a ceasefire. He described the talks as extremely productive still, claimed there were many points of agreement, and the two sides had made great progress, but he did not offer any single details on the actual talk. He also admitted that we didn't get there, though he added there was a very good chance of progress in the future, and that in the final statements, Vladimir Putin mentioned in English, which is quite rare, that next time we'll be in Moscow, which Trump replied that it was possible. So I think this really summarized the whole meeting. There was no breakthrough, no deal reached, and on concrete progress on Ukraine, we will have to wait another time in Moscow, on Russian soil, to maybe have a better hope to reach peace in this conflict.
Right. But in the meantime, Professor Pan, quite a number of pundits believe that the summit was a diplomatic win for Mr. Putin and not so much so for Mr. Trump. What are your takeaways, Professor Pan?
To start with, the Alaska summit received very high attention because this will serve as a proxy war between the United States and Russia. And in doing so, this diplomatic venue was taken a rare opportunity for the two leaders under the proxy war to meet directly. Meanwhile, to be honest with you, the Alaska summit was a little disappointing. I believe that Trump won the game tactically, but Putin won the game strategically. On the one hand, Trump won the game tactically in the sense that he was successful in inviting Putin to Alaska, which used to belong to Russia. Furthermore, as you are well aware, the B-2 strategic bomber and technological fighters like F-22s were demonstrated in the air and on the runway. In this sense, Trump was able to demonstrate a show of force in this diplomatic arena while taking advantage of his status as a host. On the other hand, Putin won the game strategically. First, since Putin showed his symbolic gesture of making diplomatic efforts to address the war. So the United States is less likely to take harsh measures against Russia. In the meantime, Russia is more likely to take a more offensive posture on the battlefield while taking advantage of the opportunity that it is winning in the strategic game. In short, Putin bought strategic time and strengthened the justification for continuing the war. Second, Putin mentioned his request to address the root causes of this war directly in front of Trump. His comments are intended to shift the blame for the war to NATO, Europe, and Ukraine, not on him. In this vein, this diplomatic venue provided Putin with an opportunity to step up psychological warfare and cognitive warfare, which are needed to win the war politically. In particular, I would say that Trump won tactically, but Putin won strategically because there was no final agreement or deal. In general, when two leaders meet, it should be the last step to address the quagmire, not the first effort, which means there should be clear agreements at the end of the summit. However, the Alaska summit did not work in this way. So if you ask me who is a bigger winner between Trump as a tactical winner and Putin as a strategic winner, I have to say that Putin is the bigger winner because a strategic win has longer impact on the game.
Right. That being said then, Silio, what has been the response then from Europe with regard to this particular summit?
The reaction to the summit in Europe has been quite sharp, mixed with the different point of view. Many Western officials warned that this was a diplomatic win for Vladimir Putin, and several European leaders, particularly in the North and Baltic states, immediately cautioned that Russia still shows no intention of ending its war in Ukraine, and it cannot be trusted with a peace treaty. It argued that more pressure should be maintained on Russia to deter them for further attack. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz called the image from Alaska disturbing, suggesting that the red carpet treatment that Putin received was too much honor for a president that is still in violation of international law. Even so, Berlin and other European capitals said they were willing to support any diplomatic effort as long as it leads to a real ceasefire and include serious security guarantees for Ukraine. That point, security guarantees, is now at the center of the European diplomacy. Leaders like the French President Emmanuel Macron or British Prime Minister Keir Starmer praise Trump's approach, willingness to explore a peace treaty, but they emphasize that no deal can be reached without Zelenskyy being at the table of negotiation, and that any agreement must be backed by long-term deterrence measure to make sure that Russia cannot simply regroup and attack in 5 or 10 years later. European officials also make clear that they expect Washington to keep the pressure on Moscow. As the EU foreign policy chief put it, the US is the only actor capable of forcing Russia into serious negotiation. So in short, the Alaska meeting has opened the door for some diplomatic talks, but raised also as many hopes as warnings about maybe a forced deal without Zelenskyy being at the table.
Right, and speaking about President Zelenskyy, he is scheduled to sit down with Mr. Trump at the White House in Washington, D.C. That is on this Monday. Professor Pan, what might President Volodymyr Zelenskyy be seeking to achieve, and what might he be hoping, of course, to avoid during his talks with Mr. Trump?
Well, two things need to be taken into consideration. First, lessons learned. Second, the feasibility of a collective defense guaranteed by the United States. First, President Zelenskyy will clearly remember that he was insulted at the last February White House meeting with Trump. So I guess he will make good use of the lessons learned and be better prepared for any contingencies. Second, the Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, mentioned that Russia agreed to Article 5-like protection by the United States for Ukraine. It means that Russia still opposes Ukraine's membership in NATO, but the United States might play a role for a security guarantee instead. With this in mind, President Zelenskyy might face three scenarios. The worst-case scenario is that Ukraine abandons the Donbas region, which Russia is eager to take, and the United States provides no security guarantee at all. This is the very case in which Russia becomes a perfect winner and Ukraine becomes a perfect loser. When this scenario takes place, indeed, President Zelenskyy is most likely to not only lose his political power in domestic politics, but also be recorded in history as a failed leader. So he will be hoping to avoid this scenario. The second scenario is that Ukraine forgives the Donbas region, but instead European forces are deployed to serve as security guarantors in the post-war period. To be more precise, European forces could be dispatched as peacekeepers permanently. This scenario also includes that the United States serve as an indirect security guarantor while providing military assistance and weapons to Ukraine. This is not the worst-case scenario, but still the worrying scenario that Zelenskyy wants to avoid. The third scenario is that Ukraine forgives the Donbas region temporarily in an aim to make an armistice and then negotiates with Russia to have a permanent deal. This scenario includes that both Europe and the United States serve as security guarantors. Ukraine might officially abandon the Crimean Peninsula in order for Russia to agree to the temporary armistice. So this might be neither the best scenario nor the worst-case scenario. The third scenario could be better one that Zelenskyy might be seeking to achieve. Despite the fact that the third scenario is a better one, this will not be an easy option for Ukraine to officially take because this decision will have a big and long-lasting negative impact on its history and sovereignty. So the upcoming summit will not only be important, but also very tough.
Right, for sure. Very tough. And hopefully we'll know more about it once it takes place in Washington, D.C. later on this Monday, local time, of course. Celia, let's now move or turn our attention, that is, to an event that took place here in South Korea also last Friday. President Lee Jae-myung was officially ushered into the top office on the same day that the country celebrated its 80th anniversary of liberation from Japanese colonial rule. Could you walk us through the message shared by the president as Korea seeks a path forward from its painful chapter in history?
Yes, it was a highly symbolic moment. South Korean President Lee Jae-myung marked his official inauguration ceremony and also with a speech that remembered the 80th anniversary of the Japanese liberation from Japanese colonial rule. And the tone issues was very future-oriented. Rather than focusing on past grievance, President Lee Jae-myung called for mutually beneficial cooperation. And he said it was time to step into the future while still remembering the past and looking at it. He acknowledged that some Koreans continue to suffer from unresolved historical issues, but he emphasized that Korea and Japan share the same yard. It's a phrase he used before to express this idea of unavoidable interdependence between Korea and Japan. Importantly, he did not raise the specific demands over wartime issues such as forced labor or sexual slavery, which his predecessor often mentioned during Liberation Day speeches. Instead, he expressed the hope that Japan would show sincerity in facing its history and maintain trust in the relationship going forward. The broader reaction to this speech was although a bit mixed. Many welcomed the pragmatic approach by President Lee Jae-myung, especially coming before the future summit with Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba later this month. But several history-related civic organizations expressed disappointment, saying that the president missed an opportunity to restate clear principles regarding historical justice and victims' rights. So overall, Lee Jae-myung's message was cautious of optimism, signaling a really openness to Japan and willing to move forward in this now very complicated world, especially in the region. But something I think we should keep worried about or be careful about is that in Japan these days, even though also it's a reciprocal sentiment to willingly to work with Korea, we have seen in the recent election in Japan that the far right is rising, and on the far right parties, their relationship with history is a bit more complicated because many politicians there refuse to acknowledge the crimes of the past, and that will cause maybe some problems later, maybe in the decades to come, if these parties could grow more in Japan. That would be even harder to maintain a good relationship with Tokyo.
Right. In the meantime, though, Professor Pan, as Celia mentioned, President Lee Jae-myung is scheduled to make a summit visit to Japan this coming weekend ahead of a similar call to the U.S. What, Professor Pan, are the diplomatic implications of this reality?
Well, I would say that the South Korea-Japan summit, which will be held ahead of the South Korea-U.S. summit, has implications in three ways. First, policy continuity. Second, the trilateral cooperation between South Korea, the United States, and Japan. And finally, stepping up its leverage over the United States. First of all, the bilateral cooperation between South Korea and Japan is required, not simply by specific leaders' policy interests, but by structural factors. The geopolitical crisis is rising due to North Korea's offensive nuclear posture. To top it up, rules-based maritime order is weakened in the Indo-Pacific region. This geopolitical crisis encourages two strong countries in the region, South Korea and Japan, to step up their cooperation. In the meantime, the upcoming South Korea-Japan summit can serve as proof of the policy continuity for the shuttle diplomacy in a situation where a structural factor drives the bilateral cooperation between the two countries. Second, the consecutive summits, which are the South Korea-Japan summit and the South Korea-US summit, show to the international community that these three countries are more than willing to make coordinated efforts for international security as well as regional stability in the Pacific. In particular, this summit will serve as a diplomatic venue where the new ROK administration is willing to play enhanced role in international and regional stability. So this line of diplomatic efforts can contribute to upgrading its national prestige in the world. Third, since the Trump administration supports a trilateral cooperation between South Korea, the United States, and Japan, the fact that the new ROK president is visiting Japan ahead of the South Korea-US summit helps South Korea step up its leverage over the United States. The upcoming ROK-US summit is most likely to serve as a venue for making hard deals. In this sense, upgrading South Korea's leverage over the United States matters to seize the initiative of the upcoming deal.
Right. Meanwhile, Celia, with regard to North Korea, President Lee Jae-myung ruled out, as I mentioned in the short clip at the start of our talk, unification by absorption on the Korean peninsula. What exactly did President Lee Jae-myung say, and what has been the response to his remarks?
Well, President Lee Jae-myung, again, in his Liberation Day speech, made important remarks regarding North Korea, breaking from the hardline approach that the past administration had. He explicitly ruled out any kind of unification by absorption, saying Seoul respects the North's current system and has no intention of engaging in hostile acts. In other words, he signaled that South Korea is not trying to overthrow the regime in the North or force it into reunification under on Seoul's term. Lee Jae-myung argued that inter-Korean dialogue has been frozen for the previous government and called this 80th anniversary of liberation an opportune moment to move away from a confrontational approach and toward more of a peaceful coexistence between the two countries. He also confirmed that his government will take a gradual confidence-building step. He mentioned also today that they will try to move and to implement the treaties that were made before in the inter-Korean treaties from 2018. So that's the goal, I think, for this administration over the next years, to really improve the guarantees of peace on the Korean peninsula. The broader reaction to this speech was also mixed. In South Korea, Lee Jae-myung's message was welcomed by moderate as a more pragmatic and realistic approach about North Korea, one that could reduce tension and reopen maybe channels of communication between the two countries. But conservatives criticize it as a naive, warning that it sends the wrong message to Pyongyang, that there's no really you gave something, but you don't expect something back from the North, and that would maybe not be useful in the long run. And in the North, in North Korea, the response was quite blunt. Even before the speech, Kim Jong-un's sister, dismissed the overtures as a pipe dream and saying that Pyongyang is not interested into any kind of discussion for the moment. So we'll see what's going to happen. But for now, any chance of communication, of dialogue between the two countries really lies into Pyongyang's hand.
Right. And then, Professor Pan, again, do help us understand the broader implications of this new stance toward North Korea by the Lee Jae-myung administration with regard to peace and security here on the Korean peninsula.
To start with, the new Rock administration stresses pragmatic diplomacy, where three items are at the forefront. First, the future-oriented Rock-US alliance. Second, inclusive diplomacy with non-like-minded countries. And easing tensions on the Korean peninsula. All three items require a policy strategy, but the last one is the hardest. What is the last? What makes the last objective harder than others? First, North Korea believes that it is successful with strategic deals with its allies, such as Russia. So Pyongyang is less motivated to make diplomatic efforts with South Korea and the United States. Second, the Kim regime believes that North Korea has become a nuclear power state now, and by doing so, the denuclearization of North Korea should not be a diplomatic agenda at all. Since this objective is the hardest, the new Rock administration is in a situation where Seoul takes good measures against Pyongyang first in a unilateral way. In this phase one, South Korea might not ask for reciprocal good measures from North Korea because Pyongyang has little motivation. In this sense, even unilateral good measures might be needed for an early effort to ease tensions on the Korean peninsula. In the meantime, two aspects need to be cautious in order to make the Indo-Korean cooperation viable in a sustainable way. First, South Korea's unilateral good measures should not result in weakening national security or military readiness. In this vein, good measures should take place along with the upgraded deterrence. Second, unilateral good measures in phase one should be evolved into reciprocal measures in phase two. Since substantial measures are taken under phase two, unilateral measures can cause North Korea to step up its leverage over South Korea and take advantage of strategic superiority, making Indo-Korean cooperation harder.
Right. Two things to think about then, as you just mentioned, Professor Pan. Well, I'm afraid that's all the time we have, Professor Pan, for today. Thank you so much for your insights, as always.
Thanks for having me.
And Celia here, thank you so much for your time and thoughts. Right, well, on that note, we end Press Perspective for this Monday. As always, thank you for watching, and do join us again, same time tomorrow.
천년을 이어온 우리의 지혜가 제천에서 다시 태어났어. 세대를 관통한 선조들의 건강 빅데이터. 빅데이터. 우리의 산과 들에서 자란 천연물은 단순한 재료가 아니야.